What's going on, guys? Andrew Piluk Hockey here, back with another video, and today we're going to be discussing William Nylander and what Elliotte Friedman said on Saturday's headlines about the Carolina Hurricanes potentially being all in for him if the Leafs were to make him available. Now, the Carolina Hurricanes have been a team that's been linked to William Nylander since last season. They've been linked to the Leafs since last season because they have been trying to at least make a deal with the Leafs regarding any other young forwards or maybe draft picks or something like that, because the Hurricanes were looking for more presence up front. They were looking for more goal scoring because that blue line is already pretty well set in my eyes. They've got a lot of young pieces, and they brought in some big names, of course, bringing in Dougie Hamilton and then the Calvin DeHaan signing. They were doing pretty well this offseason, bringing in defensemen. And between last year and this year, the biggest name that was discussed was Justin Falk. And now it's William Nylander. Of course, they're from two different teams, but when the trade rumors were going around, those were the two names that were always being brought up. Justin Falk, I don't feel like is the best piece that should be brought back to the Leafs if there were to be a trade. I feel like he's very poor defensively. He might have stepped it up this season. People are telling me he has. I haven't watched too much of him. But for William Nylander, if that was to be a deal, unless there was more coming from Carolina, it would be a loss for the Toronto Maple Leafs for sure, bar none. I mean, people hate on Jake Gardiner. Gardiner puts up more points, and I honestly don't see how Falk is like that amazing when it comes to his defensive abilities when he's been considered a defensive liability. Anyways, we'll get to that later on. But getting back to the main point, William Nylander, his name is still in the trade rumors. He still hasn't signed. Of course, he has till December 1st, or else he would have to sit out for the rest of the season. The Toronto Maple Leafs do have his rights. He's a restricted free agent. We all know this. We've all heard a billion different things, including these ridiculous LA Kings rumors. Don't believe any of that stuff. Don't read into it. Don't bother. Don't waste your time. Unless the name coming back was Drew Doughty, which it will never be. He's locked up in there in LA. He wants to be there. He wants to play there. Then it's not worth the Leafs' time. They don't have what the Hurricanes can offer if a deal was to be made. Now, let me just say this. Am I saying that he's going to be traded? No. Do I want him to be traded? No. I'd rather the Leafs keep William Nylander. I think 7 years, $7 million per is very fair when it comes to market value, cap percentage, and everything. People are like, oh, that's too much money. If the cap goes up like $5-6 million in the next 2 years, and that's lowballing it, it could go up like $8 to $10 million in the next 2 years. $7 million, 7 years. It's going to be, I mean, that AAV at $7 million would be a steal for Nylander. He's going to get better. People don't realize his ceiling. He's still not there yet. He hasn't hit his peak. 2 60-point seasons in a row, and he could be an 80-point player consistently. Obviously, he has to play the damn game to get in there. But these Carolina rumors are just ridiculous because I don't know where to start, because are they really all in? Like, we need to know what all in means, first of all. Because if all in means Slavin, then the Leafs, I mean, obviously are okay. Like, if Nylander's not going to come, then this makes sense. But it's not going to be. Is it going to be Dougie Hamilton? No. The next name that a lot of people have been talking about is Pesce. Is Brett Pesce the name that the Leafs want? And apparently they've been looking into him. They've been, if a Nylander deal were to happen again, Elliotte Friedman said that they'd be all in if the Leafs were to consider to trade him, and he still believes at this point that the Leafs are not interested in that. So this is all just, you know, a consideration of what could happen if the Leafs do say, okay, well, we're interested in dealing William Nylander. But at this point, they're not. So we have to keep that in mind. They still want to try to sign him before December 1st. This could all change by tomorrow. But I've got the cap friendly up here with all the Carolina Hurricanes defensemen, and the Hurricanes have been doing really well this year. So if they can afford to get rid of Pesce and bring in more scoring when it comes to William Nylander, and then they discuss a contract, because that's part of it too. If the Hurricanes are talking to Nylander's agent and Nylander right now, Louis Gross, then, I mean, there's got to be something going on here. Carolina must be at least being like, okay, listen, maybe if a trade happens, like, you can get all this money, because they do have a lot of cap space. I'm pretty sure they've got at least over 12 to 13 million. I thought it was even $16 million in cap space, and Nylander could get paid there. And if they go, okay, this number looks good, maybe they go ahead and go, okay, well, we want to get out. But it seems like Nylander wants to stay in Toronto. Hell, it's even gone as far as he's liking photos on Instagram on the Leafs account. Like, he just wants to play hockey, I think. He just wants to play. But let's get back to the cap friendly for the Hurricanes. They've got Dougie Hamilton, Jacob Slavin, Justin Falk, Calvin DeHaan, Brett Pesce, of course, that we've talked about, Trevor Van Riemsdyk, and Hayden Fleury. Now, out of those guys, Hamilton's a guy that's not going to move. Slavin's a guy that's not going to move. I'd imagine they're not going to move DeHaan as well because they just picked him up. And I don't think the Leafs would really be interested. As well as Van Riemsdyk and Fleury, I think that they want to get a bigger piece coming back, and that kind of leaves Brett Pesce. And of course, they would love to get a guy like Jacob Slavin or even a guy like Dougie Hamilton, but that's not going to happen. Hamilton's just under $6 million. He's got a pretty team-friendly deal. Same thing with Slavin. He's doing pretty well at just over 5.3. And then Calvin DeHaan, of course, we're not going to talk about him. Pesce is just over $4 million, and that contract goes till the 2023 or I think he's a UFA in the 2024-25 season, so that's a pretty significant deal. He's looking pretty good numbers wise there. He's not flashy when it comes to offensive output. Slavin could be potentially even bigger than he already is. Hamilton, of course. Those guys are they'll put up more numbers. But it looks like Pesce is more of a defensive sound guy, right-handed shot. He's got a decent frame. He's a decent-sized guy, and he can put up some points, but he's good defensively. So that's kind of the guy that the Leafs have been looking for. Now, there's been some reports out there. I know David Pagnotta has said some stuff. I'm not too sure. I like David Pagnotta, but I don't always think, okay, he's a true insider. I know he got the Tavares stuff right, but I don't really know if he's like a true insider. But like, there's been just random stuff about how the deal could be involved with bigger pieces. Like, there could be more guys involved in the trade. We've seen all over Twitter. I mean, Chris Johnston has been doing an excellent job of reporting stuff like this, of how many scouts have been at certain games. Myrtle as well has been good doing that stuff. They're all tweeting quite a lot about how there's been Hurricane scouts at Leaf games, of course, to look at other pieces because Nylander is not playing, obviously, and that Dubas is watching games. The Leafs have sent scouts to Hurricanes games and all over the place. So there could be more pieces involved in a deal like this. I know a lot of people are saying, well, if the Leafs give up a roster spot for a forward, they might look for a defenseman and a forward back, which it would in turn mean the Leafs would probably have to give up a little more if they wanted to get a decent scoring forward. Now, a lot of people I've seen on Twitter, even some decent sources have said that they could just try to go all in and go for a Teravainen type of player, which I don't think is realistic. Maybe they take a shot at a Brock McGinn. I know I've seen him play quite a bit. Again, this is kind of a bias because he's a decent dude. He went to my high school. I didn't have too many conversations with him, but the conversations I did, he was a really nice guy. And he's a good scorer. He blocks a lot of shots. He's a good forward. He works hard, but it's not the type of guy that you would replace Nylander with. He would be more of a depth piece to fit in there with a defenseman like a Pesce, and then maybe the Leafs add something in too. Like, you have to imagine the Leafs don't want to make a deal like this, so they would shoot for the stars in a trade proposal. So they'd probably be like, oh yeah, Slavin. That's who they're going to ask for. But they're probably not going to get him. Unless, here's the thing, that's what I'm going to go back to, is what is all in? We don't know what the Hurricanes mean by that they're all in, because they're not going to come out and be like, okay guys, so just a press release, Carolina Hurricanes speaking here, we're going to give up Slavin for Nylander, hopefully that works. Like, they're not going to come out and tell us. If a trade happens, we'll know. But if this falls apart, we'll never know what that means, and I'm kind of intrigued. Hopefully somebody gets some info on that. But if I was to just make a prediction, the Leafs and Hurricanes definitely have had conversations. But I think it's gone to the point where it's like, Kyle Dubas is probably like, okay, and please, if you're going to listen to any part of this video, listen to this. I think Dubas is probably taking these calls, but it's kind of like, okay, you can let me know, but I don't want to trade William Nylander. I'm making this apparent to the agent. Like, I don't want him to, hear that we're on the phone and all this stuff like that, and that I'm thinking that I'm going to trade him. He went to Switzerland or wherever he went to tell Nylander that he wasn't wanting to trade him. So he's probably saying, okay, I'll listen, but I'm not going to counteroffer you right now because I don't really want to move him. So Carolina could be sitting there making all these deals, and Dubas going, okay, well, we'll check in after. We'll check in a bit. I'm trying to deal with William Nylander. So we'll have to see what happens. This has just been a lot to take in, but it seems as though the Hurricanes would be the team that would be the first team calling the Leafs and trying to make a deal if Nylander became available. And again, I'm going to stress that again, if he becomes available. Listen to what Elliotte Friedman is saying. He's not saying that the Leafs are already taking all these calls and trying to move him, because that would be a huge headline that I'm sure everybody would get a hold of, because Hurricanes people would probably want that out there. It'd probably make the deal a little more difficult for the Leafs, because I don't think a lot of players on that Leaf team would be too happy with them just being like, okay, like, we're going to trade him. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. The best case scenario is Leafs and the Leafs and Kyle Dubas and William Nylander, Lewis Gross just come together. They get something done here, and Nylander is back in the Maple Leafs lineup. So if you're new, make sure you subscribe. Love to have more hockey conversations with you. Join the squad. Let's get to 4,000 subscribers. There's links down below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Click the notification bell. I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Peace.